March 31st, 1945. 5:47 hours. Observation post Yontan, northwestern Okinawa. The pre-dawn darkness clings to the coral ridgeline like a burial shroud. Lieutenant Tadashi No presses the cold rubber eyepiece of his naval binoculars against his face, scanning the East China Sea through the morning mist. His fingers, numbed by the damp chill that seeps through his wool uniform, adjust the focus wheel with practiced precision. Behind him, in the cramped concrete bunker carved into the hillside, 3 enlisted men huddle around a field telephone, their breath forming small clouds in the half-light. The observation post smells of damp stone, gun oil, and the acrid bite of cigarette smoke, cheap tobacco that does little to calm nerves stretched taut by weeks of waiting. No has been awake for 37 hours. Sleep became impossible 3 days ago when reconnaissance aircraft reported massive ship movements near the Kerama Islands. The 32nd Army headquarters in Shuri issued standing orders: maintain constant vigilance. Report all enemy movements. The Americans are coming. Everyone knows this. What no one knows is when, where, or in what numbers. The lieutenant shifts his weight, feeling the concrete beneath his boots. His eyes ache. He's seen nothing but empty ocean and the dark silhouettes of the smaller islands offshore. The seabirds haven't even begun their morning calls yet. Behind him, Private Yoshida lights another cigarette, the match flare briefly illuminating the bunker's interior maps tacked to wooden boards, communication equipment, boxes of ammunition stacked against the walls. The young private's hands shake as he brings the cigarette to his lips. "Sir," Yoshida says quietly, "perhaps I should take a watch. You should rest." No doesn't respond. Something at the edge of his vision has changed. He swings the binoculars slowly to the northwest, toward Ieshima. The horizon, barely distinguishable from the sea in the pre-dawn gloom, appears different. Darker. He blinks hard, then looks again. His heart stops. The horizon is not a horizon anymore. It is a wall. A wall of steel that stretches from north to south as far as he can see through the mist. Ships. Dozens of ships. No, hundreds of ships. Grey hulls emerging from the darkness like the teeth of some massive predator rising from the depths. Mother of God, No whispers. The binoculars nearly slip from his hands. He grips them tighter, his knuckles white, and begins counting. Battleships he can identify at least 6 by their massive superstructures. Cruisers. Destroyers cutting white wakes through the black water. And behind them, the transports. Endless transports, each one carrying hundreds, perhaps thousands of American soldiers. The fleet extends beyond the range of his vision, disappearing into the morning haze to the north and south. Private Yoshida. No's voice cracks. "Get on that telephone. Now. Headquarters. Emergency priority." The bunker explodes into motion. Yoshida drops his cigarette and lunges for the field telephone, cranking the handle furiously. The other 2 enlisted men, Corporal Tanaka and Private First Class Mori, rush to the observation slit, pressing their faces against the concrete to see. "Sweet Buddha," Tanaka breathes. No forces himself to remain calm, to count systematically. He divides the visible ocean into sections, counting clusters of ships, estimating their types and sizes. The sky begins to lighten first to deep purple, then to a blood red that paints the underside of the low clouds. With each passing minute, more vessels emerge from the darkness. Aircraft carriers. He counts 4, then 5, then loses count as more appear. Landing ships. The LSDs and smaller craft form their own armada behind the warships, a city of steel floating on the Pacific. "Headquarters on the line, sir." Yoshida holds the receiver toward him. No doesn't take it yet. He needs a number. An accurate count. The generals will demand specifics, not vague estimates. He continues scanning, his mind racing to categorize and calculate. 600 ships. No, more. 700? The fleet extends at least 20 kilometers across his field of vision, perhaps 30. And he can only see a fraction of what must be out there, hidden by distance and lingering darkness. Tell them. No's throat is dry. He swallows hard. Tell them the entire American Navy is offshore. Every ship they possess. Tell them we are facing more than 600 vessels, possibly approaching 1,000. Yoshida's face goes pale. Sir. 1,000. Did I stutter, Private? Make the report. Through the binoculars, No watches as the fleet begins a methodical transformation. The warships are taking up bombardment positions. He can see it now: the deliberate spacing, the formation adjustments, the way the battleships anchor themselves broadside to the shore. They're not just passing by. They're preparing to unleash hell. Yoshida speaks rapidly into the telephone, his voice high and tight. Behind him, Mori has found another pair of binoculars and is scanning the southern approaches. Sir, there are more coming from the south. The fleet extends past Keramaret. I can see landing craft, hundreds of them. The sun breaks the horizon at 6:12 hours. Golden light spills across the East China Sea, and No feels his stomach twist into knots. In the full light of dawn, the invasion fleet becomes truly visible. It is beyond anything he has imagined, beyond anything in his military training, beyond anything in human history. The ships don't just fill the ocean, they replace it. Where there should be water, there is only steel. Headquarters acknowledges the report, Yoshida says, his voice hollow. They're asking for confirmation. They say the number is impossible. No lowers his binoculars and turns to face his men. They're all staring at him, waiting for orders, waiting for reassurance, waiting for their lieutenant to tell them that everything will be fine, that the Imperial Japanese Army can repel this invasion, that the spirit of Bushido will triumph over American material. He cannot give them that lie. Tell headquarters the count is accurate, No says quietly. Tell them I have personally observed at least 600 major vessels, with many more beyond visual range. Tell them. He pauses, choosing his next words carefully. Tell them that defense of this island may not be possible. Tell them that if the Americans can assemble this force for Okinawa, the home islands cannot be defended. Yoshida stares at him, stunned. To speak such words is tantamount to treason. Defeatism in the face of the enemy. But Yoshida sees what No sees. They all do. The mathematical reality is inescapable. This isn't a battle they're about to witness. It's an execution. The telephone crackles. Yoshida listens, then looks at No with wide eyes. Sir, Colonel Yahara wants to speak with you directly. Colonel Hiromichi Yahara, Senior Staff Officer of the 32nd Army, one of the brilliant minds directing the defense of Okinawa. No takes the receiver, his hand steady despite the tremor running through his chest. Lieutenant No reporting, sir. The voice on the other end is crisp, controlled. Lieutenant, I need you to understand the gravity of what you're reporting. You're telling me that the Americans have brought close to 1,000 ships to Okinawa.
Aïe, Colonel.
I am certain of the number. I have been observing since before dawn. The fleet stretches across the entire northwest approach. In my estimation, based on formation density and visible coverage, there are at minimum 600 major vessels, with support craft bringing the total to well over 1,000. A long silence. No can hear papers rustling on the other end, voices conferring in the background at headquarters. When Yahara speaks again, his voice carries a weight that wasn't there before. Continue observing and reporting, Lieutenant. Count carefully. Document everything. History will want to know the exact composition of this armada. A pause. You and your men should prepare yourselves. Within hours, you will be under the most intense naval bombardment in human history. Your position will likely not survive the day. We understand, Colonel. We will continue reporting as long as we are able. Ten Hiker Banzai, Lieutenant.
Banzai, Colonel.
The line goes dead. No hands the receiver back to Yoshida and returns to the observation slit. The fleet has moved closer. He can now distinguish individual details: the bristling gun barrels of the battleships, each one capable of hurling a projectile the size of a small automobile. The aircraft carriers have begun launching planes. They rise from the flat tops in steady streams, forming up in massive formations before turning toward Okinawa. The drone of their engines reaches the observation post, a sound like distant thunder that will not stop. Corporal Tanaka has a notebook and is sketching the fleet layout, marking ship positions and types. It's futile, no knows. The Americans will be on the beach in hours, maybe less. These notes will be lost, burned, or captured. But Tanaka draws anyway, because what else can they do? They are observers. This is their duty. Sir, Mori says, pointing south, landing craft are forming up. They're beginning their approach runs. No swings his binoculars southward. The young private is correct. The smaller vessels LCVPS, LCIS, LCMS are organizing into waves. Hundreds of them. They emerge from the larger transport ships like insects from a disturbed nest, circling, forming neat rows, then beginning the slow, methodical journey toward the beaches. Each craft carries 40, maybe 50 men. He counts 1 wave, then 2, then 3. 10 waves. 20. The math becomes staggering. Tens of thousands of soldiers, all headed for Okinawa's shores simultaneously. At 7 o'clock hours, the bombardment begins. The first salvo comes from the battleships. No watches the orange flashes blossom along their sides, sees the massive guns recoil, and counts 1001, 1002 before the shells arrive. The sound is apocalyptic. Explosions erupt across the southern beaches, throwing sand and vegetation hundreds of feet into the air. The shock waves reach the observation post seconds later, a physical pressure that makes Noah's ears pop. Then the cruisers join in. Then the destroyers. Within minutes, the entire shoreline from Higuchi to Chaitan is engulfed in smoke and fire. The Japanese defensive positions bunkers, pillboxes, artillery emplacements carefully constructed over months are systematically obliterated. No watches as a concrete fortification he personally inspected 2 weeks ago simply vanishes in a direct hit from what must be a 16-inch shell. One moment it exists, the next there is only a crater. They're not even landing yet, Tanaka says, his voice barely audible over the bombardment. This is just preparation. The shelling continues. 5 minutes. 10. 30. An hour. The Americans are in no hurry. They have unlimited ammunition, unlimited time, unlimited power. They are demonstrating what it means to possess total military superiority. Every explosion is a message. Resistance is meaningless. No has stopped counting ships. The number no longer matters. What matters is the inevitability of what is witnessing. The Empire has sent him and 77,000 other soldiers to defend Okinawa. The Americans have brought overwhelming force to ensure those defenders die. The mathematics are simple. The outcome predetermined. At 8:30 hours, the landing craft reached the beaches. Through his binoculars, No watches American soldiers pour onto the sand. They don't run, they walk. There is no desperate scramble, no bloody chaos. The bombardment has been so thorough that organized resistance at the beachhead is impossible. The Americans wade ashore, form up into units, and begin moving inland. More waves follow. And more. And more. An endless stream of men and machines and equipment flowing onto Okinawa like a tide that will not recede. Private Yoshida is crying quietly in the corner of the bunker. Mori has stopped watching and is praying, his lips moving silently. Tanaka continues to sketch, his hands mechanical, his eyes distant. No knows what he must do. He sits down at the small field desk and pulls out a piece of paper official Imperial Army stationery. He begins to write his report for Colonel Yahara, for the 32nd Army, for whoever in Tokyo might read it. The 31st of March, 1945, 9 o'clock hours. American invasion fleet consists of minimum 600 major combat vessels, with total armada exceeding 1,500 ships including support and transport craft. Estimate minimum 100,000 enemy troops committed to initial landing, with reserves unlimited. Naval bombardment intensity unprecedented. Beach defenses neutralized. Enemy establishing beachhead without significant resistance. Assessment: defense of Okinawa is tactically impossible. If this force represents American capability for a single operation, defense of the home islands is strategically impossible. Respectfully submit that Empire must pursue immediate diplomatic solution to avoid total annihilation. Lieutenant Tadashi No, 32nd Army, Imperial Japanese Army. He folds the paper and places it in an envelope, which he hands to Corporal Tanaka. When the position becomes untenable, someone must deliver this to headquarters. Volunteer. Tanaka takes the envelope. Hi, sir. I will deliver it. Outside, the bombardment intensifies. American aircraft are now adding their ordnance to the naval guns, bombs and rockets that scream down from the sky. The observation post shakes with each nearby impact. Dust falls from the concrete ceiling. No returns to the observation slit and resumes counting. Because that is his duty. To watch. To document. To bear witness to the moment when the Japanese Empire's fate was sealed not by the invasion of Okinawa itself, but by the unstoppable armada that made that invasion possible. He counts 600 ships. Then 650. Then 700. The count continues to rise as the morning sun climbs higher, illuminating an ocean that has become a graveyard of Japanese military ambitions. March 31st, 1945. 11:43 hours. 32nd Army Headquarters, Shuri Castle, Central Okinawa. The underground command center smells of mildew, sweat, and the metallic tang of radio equipment running at capacity. Colonel Hiromichi Yahara stands before a large tactical map of Okinawa, his uniform crisp despite the humidity that saturates the reinforced concrete bunker 30 feet below the ancient castle grounds. Red pins mark Japanese defensive positions. Blue pins, far too many blue pins, represent reported American ship positions based on observations from Lieutenant Kōno and 17 other coastal observation posts. The map looks like a blue infection spreading across the ocean. Yahara's aide, Captain Mitsuru Takeda, enters through the heavy steel door, a fresh stack of field reports in his hands. The young captain's face is grey. He's been reading the incoming messages as they arrive from the radio room. Sir, latest count from all observation posts combined. Takeda's voice is steady, but Yahara notes the slight tremor in his hands. Confirmed count is now 647 major combat vessels. Estimated total including all support craft, landing ships, and auxiliaries exceeds 1,400 vessels. Yahara doesn't react. He's been calculating this number in his head for the past 3 hours as reports filtered in from every corner of the island. 1,400 ships. The number is so large it ceases to have meaning. How does one conceptualize such a fleet? The entire Imperial Japanese Navy at its peak before Midway, before the Philippine Sea, before Leyte Gulf numbered fewer than 400 major vessels. Troop strength estimates. Yahara asks. Takeda consults his notes. Based on observed landing craft and transport capacity, initial assault force is estimated between 150,000 and 180,000 men. Reserves offshore likely double that number. So we face at least 300,000 American troops, possibly 400,000, supported by the largest naval force in human history. Yahara states it as fact, not question. He removes his glasses and cleans them with a handkerchief, a nervous habit he's developed over years of staff work. Captain Takeda, what is the current strength of the 32nd Army? Approximately 77,000 combat troops, sir. Including Okinawan Home Guard and auxiliary forces, perhaps 100,000 total. The mathematics are obscene. 4-to-1 odds, perhaps worse. And that doesn't account for the Americans' complete air superiority, their unlimited artillery support, their mechanized armor, their supply lines that stretch unbroken back to Pearl Harbor, to San Francisco, to the factories of Detroit that produce tanks and planes faster than Japan can destroy them. Yahara replaces his glasses and studies the map again. The 32nd Army's defensive strategy, painstakingly developed over months, was based on the assumption that the Americans would land perhaps 100,000 men supported by 200 ships. The plan was to bleed them, to make every yard of Okinawan soil cost American lives, to delay the invasion of the home islands, to buy time for diplomatic negotiations. That plan is now meaningless. Where is General Ushijima? Yahara asks. In his quarters, sir. He requested solitude to meditate. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, commander of the 32nd Army, a thoughtful man who writes poetry and practices Zen meditation. A man now tasked with the impossible, defending Okinawa against a force that could conquer entire nations. And General Ch. Takeda hesitates. General CH he is in the war room, sir. He is insisting that we launch immediate counterattacks against the beachhead. Yahara closes his eyes. Lieutenant General Izumu Sich, the 32nd Army's Chief of Staff, a firebrand who believes in aggressive action, in the warrior spirit overcoming material disadvantage, in death before dishonor. CH will want to hurl their limited reserves at the American beachhead in suicidal banzai charges. It will accomplish nothing except hastening their defeat. Tell General CH I will join him shortly. First, I need to draft a report for Tokyo. Sir, General CH has already sent a report to Imperial General Headquarters. He described the invasion fleet as substantial but expressed confidence that our defensive preparations will inflict catastrophic casualties. Yahara feels a flash of anger air for him. CH is lying to Tokyo. Not deliberately, perhaps. The general is a true believer, incapable of accepting reality when it contradicts his worldview. But the result is the same. Imperial General Headquarters will make decisions based on false information. Captain, prepare a separate communication. Direct to the Imperial General Staff. Encrypt it with the highest classification. I will personally compose the message. Takeda nods and retreats. Yahara sits at his desk, a simple wooden table with a single lamp, and pulls out his writing materials. He must be precise. He must be clear. The fate of the Empire may depend on Tokyo understanding what is happening here. He writes. Most secret. Priority 1. 2. Imperial General Headquarters. Tokyo. From Colonel Hiromichi Yahara, Senior Staff Officer, 32nd Army. Subject: American Invasion Force Composition. Operation against Okinawa. 1. American invasion fleet consists of minimum 647 confirmed major combat vessels including battleships, fleet carriers, cruisers, and destroyers. Total armada including all support vessels exceeds 1,400 ships. 2. Initial assault force estimated 150,000 to 180,000 troops with equal or greater reserves maintained offshore. 3. American air superiority is absolute. Estimate minimum 1,000 aircraft operating from carriers and supporting bases. 4. Naval bombardment has neutralized all beach defenses. American forces are establishing beachhead with minimal casualties. 5. Strategic assessment. This force represents the largest military operation in history. If the Americans can assemble such overwhelming power for a single operation against Okinawa, they possess the capability to mount an even larger invasion of the home islands. 6. Current defensive strategy cannot prevent American conquest of Okinawa. We can delay but not defeat this force. Respectfully submit that if this operation represents American war-making capacity, conventional military defense of Japan is impossible. 7. Recommendation. Imperial government should consider immediate diplomatic initiatives to seek terms while Japan still possesses some negotiating position. Continuation of war against such power can only result in total destruction of empire and Japanese people. Yahara. He reads it twice. The words border on sedition. Suggesting surrender, even obliquely, violates every principle of bushido. Officers have committed seppuku for less defeatist statements. But Yahara is a realist. He studied at American military schools before the war. He understands American industrial capacity, their systematic approach to warfare, their ability to project power across vast distances. He has always known, in his heart, that Japan cannot win a prolonged war against the United States. Today, that knowledge has become undeniable truth. He seals the message and hands it to Takeda. Transmit immediately. Make copies. Hide one copy in the tunnel system somewhere. It might survive even if headquarters is destroyed. Sir, you think headquarters will be destroyed? Yahara looks at his young aide. Takeda is 26 years old, a graduate of the Imperial Military Academy, married with a young daughter in Fukuoka. In other circumstances, he might have had a long career, might have taught tactics at the academy, might have watched his daughter grow up. Captain, the Americans have 1,400 ships. Within weeks, those ships will systematically reduce every military position on this island to rubble. Shuri Castle has stood for 500 years. It will not survive this battle. Neither will most of us. Takeda's face remains impassive, but Yahara sees his throat work as he swallows. I understand, sir. I will transmit the message. After Takeda leaves, Yahara permits himself a moment of weakness. He sits heavily in his chair and covers his face with his hands. He thinks of his own family, his wife Fumiko, his 3 sons. They are in Hiroshima. Will Hiroshima be safer than Okinawa? Or will the Americans bring their armada to every city, every town, until nothing remains? A knock at the door.
Colonel Yahara?
General CH requests your presence in the war room immediately. Yahara composes himself, straightens his uniform, and walks through the concrete corridors to the main command center. The war room is carved from solid rock, reinforced with steel beams, ventilated by diesel-powered fans that fill the air with exhaust fumes. 20 officers crowd around the central map table. General Sich stands at the head, a short, stocky man with fierce eyes and a voice that carries like a cannon.
Colonel Yahara.
Finally, we are discussing the counterattack. I propose we commit the 24th Division to a night assault on the American beachhead. We will drive them back into the sea. The other officers are nodding. Yahara sees the desperation in their faces. They want to believe. They need to believe that Japanese spirit can overcome American steel. General CH, Yahara says carefully, the Americans have landed over 100,000 men. They have complete air superiority and naval gunfire support. The 24th Division numbers 15,000 men. A frontal assault would be glorious. CH slams his fist on the table. We will show the Americans that Japanese soldiers do not fear death. We will inspire the home islands with our sacrifice. Sacrifice accomplishes nothing if it does not serve a strategic purpose, Yahara counters. Our mission is to delay the Americans, to inflict maximum casualties over maximum time. Throwing away our best division in a single night accomplishes neither goal. The room falls silent. Officers glance nervously between the 2 men. Yahara outranks most of them, but CH has the ear of General Ushijima. More importantly, CH represents the old warrior tradition: courage, aggression, death before dishonor. Yahara represents the cold calculus of modern warfare: logistics, attrition, strategic objectives. It is not a fair fight. In the Japanese army, spirit always trumps strategy. Colonel, CH says, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet, are you suggesting we simply allow the Americans to occupy Okinawa without resistance? I am suggesting we resist intelligently. We have prepared extensive defensive positions in depth. The Shori line. The tunnel networks. We can make the Americans pay for every kilometer, but only if we preserve our forces and fight from prepared positions. Your defensive strategy is cowardice dressed in clever language. My defensive strategy is mathematics. The Americans outnumber us 4-1. They have unlimited ammunition. They control the air and sea. The only way we can hurt them is to force them into close combat where their material advantages are reduced. That means luring them into our defensive zones, not charging into their guns. Seich's face reddens. Several officers step back, sensing the confrontation escalating. Before either man can speak further, a new voice cuts through the tension. Gentlemen, perhaps we should seek General Ushijima's guidance on this matter. Everyone turns. General Mitsuru Ushijima stands in the doorway, his expression serene despite the crisis. He has the face of a scholar, not a warrior: gentle eyes, a slight build, hands that look more comfortable holding a calligraphy brush than a sword. General Ushijima, CH says immediately, we were discussing the counterattack. I heard the discussion. Ushijima enters the room, and every officer comes to attention. Colonel Yahara, show me the latest intelligence on the invasion fleet. Yahara spreads the updated map on the table. The blue pins have multiplied. Sir, confirmed count is 647 major combat vessels, over 1,400 total ships. American troop strength is estimated at 300,000 to 400,000. Ushijima studies the map for a long moment. His face reveals nothing. When he speaks, His voice is quiet, almost meditative. I have been reading the Hagakure this morning. There is a passage, when faced with two choices, choose the path that leads to death. Many interpret this as encouragement for reckless courage. But I believe it means something deeper, that when facing inevitable death, how one dies becomes the only choice remaining. He looks up at his officers. We will die on Okinawa. All of us understand this now, yes. Uncomfortable shifting. No one speaks. The question is not whether we will die, but whether our deaths will have meaning. General CH proposes we die quickly, gloriously, in one magnificent charge. Colonel Yahara proposes we die slowly, carefully, making the Americans pay for every position. Both men offer a path to death. We must choose which path serves the Empire better. Ushijima places his finger on the map, tracing the American beachhead. The Americans have brought the largest fleet in history to conquer this small island. Why? Because Okinawa is the key to the home islands. If they take Okinawa quickly, they invade Japan by autumn. If we delay them even by weeks, we give Tokyo time to strengthen defenses, to negotiate, perhaps to survive. He looks at CH. Your courage honors our ancestors. But Colonel Yahara's mathematics may honor our children more. The room is absolutely still. General Ushijima has made his decision. We will follow Colonel Yahara's defensive strategy. No major counterattacks. We preserve our strength and make the Americans come to us. We fight from our tunnels and fortifications. We make them pay for every meter of ground. He pauses. But General CH, you are correct that we must show spirit. I authorize limited night raids, company-sized actions to disrupt American supply lines and remind them that Japanese soldiers are not merely waiting to die. Can both my colonels accept this compromise? Yahara and CH exchange glances. It is Solomon's wisdom giving each man enough to maintain face while charting a middle course. Hi, General, they say in unison. Good. Now, Colonel Yahara, I want you to send another message to Tokyo. Tell them that the 32nd Army will defend Okinawa to the last man, but that we cannot prevent its eventual fall. Tell them the size of the American fleet makes clear what we face if they invade the home islands. Tell them. Ushijima pauses, choosing words carefully. Tell them that this may be Japan's last chance to seek an honorable peace. Several officers gasp. Yahara nods slowly. I have already sent such a message, General. I took the liberty dash. You took the necessary action. Thank you, Colonel. Ushijima turns to face his assembled staff. Gentlemen, we have our orders. We will fight as long as possible. We will make the Americans remember Okinawa for generations. But we will not throw away our lives meaninglessly. Dismissed. Return to your duties. The officers file out. Yahara remains behind, alone with Ushijima. Sir, thank you for supporting the defensive strategy. I know it goes against against tradition, against spirit, against everything we were taught at the academy. Ushijima smiles sadly. I spent this morning watching American ships through a periscope. I counted until I lost count. Colonel, when I was young, I believed bushido made us invincible. Today I learned that 1,400 ships make bushido irrelevant. Yahara says nothing. There is nothing to say. How long can we hold them? Ushijima asks. 2 months. Perhaps 3 if we are fortunate and they are cautious. That's all. Against such odds, that is remarkable. Ushijima walks to the map and touches the Shuri Castle marker, their current location. When this position falls, withdraw south. Fight as long as ammunition remains. When ammunition is gone. He doesn't finish the sentence. Hi, General. I understand. Good. Now go rest, Colonel. The real battle begins tomorrow. You will need your strength. Yahara bows and leaves. In the corridor outside, he passes Captain Takeda, who is carrying a new batch of reports. Sir, message from Lieutenant No at observation post Yontan. He says the bombardment has intensified. He estimates his position has 2 hours before it becomes untenable. Yahara thinks of the young lieutenant he spoke with this morning, the man who first counted the fleet, who first understood what it meant. Tell Lieutenant No his observations have been invaluable. Tell him to evacuate when necessary. His duty is to survive and bear witness. Hi, sir. But Yahara knows Lieutenant No will not evacuate. None of them will. They are Japanese soldiers. When their position falls, they will fight to the end. All across Okinawa, 77,000 men are coming to the same realization that they face an enemy so vast, so powerful, so overwhelming that survival is not possible. Only the manner of death remains to be chosen. And in Tokyo, 1,500 kilometers to the north, Imperial General Headquarters is about to receive Colonel Yahara's message. They will read his count: 647 major ships, 1,400 total vessels, 300,000 to 400,000 troops. They will understand, as Yahara and Ushijima and Lieutenant No have understood, what it means when America brings its full industrial might to bear. The Empire is doomed. April 1st, 1945. 3:20 hours. Imperial General Headquarters, Ichigaya, Tokyo. The cipher room smells of burnt coffee and cigarette smoke. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Hayashi stares at the decoded message from Okinawa, reading it for the 3rd time. His hands are shaking. In his 12 years of naval intelligence service, he has never seen a report like this. The numbers don't just indicate a military operation, they represent a complete reordering of strategic reality. 647 major combat vessels. Over 1,400 ships total. Hayashi checks the authentication codes again. The message is genuine. Transmitted directly from Colonel Yahara's headquarters in Shuri. Encrypted with the highest classification codes. There can be no mistake, no exaggeration, no hysteria. Sir. His assistant, Ensign Kenji Watanabe, hovers nervously at his elbow. Should we wake the Chief of Staff? Hayashi looks at the clock on the wall. 03:23 hours. The building is mostly empty at this hour, occupied only by skeleton watch crews and exhausted staff officers who have given up on sleep. But this message cannot wait. General Yoshiji Umezu, Chief of the Imperial General Staff, must see it immediately. Wake him, Hayashi says. Wake everyone. Full staff meeting within the hour. And Watanabe? Wake the Navy Staff Office as well. Admiral Toyoda needs to see this. The ensign's eyes widen. A joint Army-Navy meeting at 4 o'clock hours can mean only one thing: crisis. Within 30 minutes, the main conference room at Ichigaya begins to fill with bleary-eyed officers, their uniforms hastily donned, faces creased from interrupted sleep. Maps of Okinawa cover the walls. Intelligence reports clutter every surface. The room's windows are blacked out. Tokyo has been under strict blackout conditions since the B-29 raids began, and even the Imperial General Headquarters must hide from American bombers. General Umezu enters at 3:55 hours, followed by Admiral Soimu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet. Umezu is a hard man, traditional, a believer in military discipline and the warrior spirit. Toyoda is more pragmatic, scarred by the disasters at Midway and the Philippine Sea. They take their seats at the head of the long conference table. This had better be important, Umezu growls. What intelligence justifies waking the entire staff? Hayashi stands, distributing copies of Yahara's decoded message. Sir, we have received detailed reconnaissance reports from Okinawa regarding the American invasion force. The numbers are unprecedented. Umezu reads. His expression doesn't change, but his knuckles whiten as he grips the paper. Admiral Toyoda reads more slowly, his face gradually draining of color. Around the table, senior officers absorb the information with varying degrees of shock. This is impossible, says Colonel Arao Okikatsu, Chief of the Military Affairs Section. No fleet this size has ever been assembled in human history. There must be an error. Multiple counting of the same vessels, perhaps. Fog or distance causing observers to overestimate. The report comes from 17 separate observation posts across Okinawa, Hayashi replies. Cross-referenced observations from different angles and distances. The count has been verified multiple times. Lieutenant No's initial observation was corroborated by observers at Nakagusaku Bay, Naha, and the Motobu Peninsula. The numbers are consistent. 647 major warships, Admiral Toyoda says quietly. That exceeds the current strength of the entire Imperial Japanese Navy by a factor of 10. Perhaps more. He looks up at his fellow officers. Gentlemen, if this report is accurate, the Americans have assembled every available ship in their Pacific Fleet, plus reinforcements from the Atlantic. This is the sum total of American naval power focused on a single operation. Against one island, adds Vice Admiral Shigeru Fukudome. An island that is 110 kilometers long. They are using the entire American Navy to conquer an area smaller than some of their cities. The silence that follows is profound. These are men trained to think strategically, to calculate force ratios and logistics, to plan campaigns across thousands of kilometers. They understand what Toyoda and Fukudome have just articulated. The Americans are demonstrating not just military power, but military excess. They have brought 10 times more force than necessary because they can. Because their industrial capacity allows such waste. Because they want to send a message. General Umezu breaks the silence. Colonel Yahara includes a strategic assessment. He reads from the message, if the Americans can assemble such overwhelming power for a single operation against Okinawa, they possess the capability to mount an even larger invasion of the home islands. Current defensive strategy cannot prevent American conquest. Respectfully submit that if this operation represents American war-making capacity, conventional military defense of Japan is impossible.
Défaitisme, Colonel Okikatsu Snap.
Yahara should be relieved of command for such statements. We have 2.5 million men mobilized for homeland defense. We have thousands of aircraft being prepared for special attack operations. The Americans may have ships, but we have bushido dash. Ships carry bombs, Colonel. Admiral Toyoda's voice cuts like a blade. Ships carry aircraft. Ships carry troops and tanks and artillery. Ships bring material, and material wins modern wars. I have commanded the combined fleet for 1 year. In that year, I have watched American naval power increase while ours decreases. Every month they build more ships than we can destroy. Every month their carrier air groups grow larger while ours shrink. If they bring 1,400 ships to Okinawa, what will they bring to Kyushu? To Tokyo Bay? Then what do you propose, Admiral? Umezu's tone is dangerous. Surrender. Abandon our soldiers on Okinawa. Abandon the Emperor. I propose we face reality. Toyoda stands, walking to the map of Okinawa on the wall. Look at this island. We have stationed 77,000 troops there. Good troops, the 32nd Army, experienced units, well-prepared defenses. Against a normal invasion force, they could hold for months. But they face 300,000 Americans supported by this armada. Yahara's assessment is correct. Okinawa will fall. The only question is how long it takes and how many of our men die in the process. And when Okinawa falls, asks Major General Masakazu Amono, Vice Chief of the Army General Staff. When Okinawa falls, the Americans establish air bases 600 kilometers from Kyushu. B-29s will hit our cities daily. Fighters will escort them. We will have no air defense. Then they invade. And if they bring 1,400 ships to invade Okinawa, imagine what they bring to invade Japan itself. The room erupts in argument. Some officers insist that the homeland can be defended, that Japanese spirit will triumph, that the Americans lack the will to sustain massive casualties. Others, particularly the naval officers who have watched the combined fleet systematically destroyed over 3 years, shake their heads. They have done the mathematics. They know what is coming. Lieutenant Commander Hayashi watches the debate with growing despair. He is an intelligence officer. His job is to present facts. But facts no longer seem to matter. Half the men in this room are willing to sacrifice millions of Japanese lives on the altar of honor and tradition, even when victory is mathematically impossible. General Umezu finally raises his hand for silence. Enough. We will present this intelligence to the Supreme War Council. They will make the political decisions. Our responsibility is military planning. Admiral Toyoda, what is the current operational strength of the combined fleet? Toyoda's answer is brutal in its brevity. We have 1 operational battleship Yamato, 3 light cruisers, 8 destroyers, perhaps 1,500 aircraft, most of them being prepared for Tokyo operations. He uses the Japanese term for special attack kamikaze. Against 1,400 American ships, we can do nothing except die gloriously. Then that is what we will do, Umezu says firmly. We will launch Operation Tengo. Yamato will lead a suicide mission to Okinawa. We will show the Americans that Japanese resolve cannot be broken, regardless of their material advantages. Several officers nod approvingly. Others look sick. Hayashi calculates the odds: 1 battleship and a handful of escorts against 647 American warships. Yamato will not reach Okinawa. It will be sunk within hours of leaving port, taking 3,000 sailors to the bottom. It will accomplish nothing except adding 1 more ship to the casualty lists. But that is not the point. The point is to demonstrate spirit. To show that Japan will fight to the last man, the last ship, the last aircraft. To make the cost of invading the home islands so terrible that the Americans will seek a negotiated peace rather than unconditional surrender. It is a strategy built on hope, not mathematics. Admiral Fukudome speaks carefully. General Umezu, if I may suggest an alternative perspective, the Americans have demonstrated at Okinawa that they possess unlimited resources. Unlimited ships, unlimited bombs, unlimited everything. If we waste Yamato in a gesture, we lose our last symbol of naval power. Perhaps we should consider Colonel Yahara's suggestion. Perhaps we should explore diplomatic options while we still have some leverage. The temperature in the room drops 20 degrees. Fukudome has spoken the unspeakable: negotiation, surrender, leverage. Umezu's voice is ice. What leverage do we possess? The Americans demand unconditional surrender. They will hang our leaders as war criminals. They will dismantle the empire. They will destroy our culture. There is no diplomatic option that preserves Japan. There might be an option that preserves the Japanese people, Fukudome says quietly. Which is more important, saving face or saving lives? This meeting is over. Umezu stands abruptly. We will forward the intelligence to the Supreme War Council. Admiral Toyoda, prepare Operation Tengo. I want Yamato ready to sortie within the week. We will show the Americans what bushido means. The officers file out, conversations continuing in hushed tones in the hallways. Hayashi remains behind, gathering his papers. Admiral Toyoda approaches him. Lieutenant Commander, I want you to prepare a comprehensive analysis. Compare American naval strength at Okinawa with estimated forces they could bring against the home islands. Include projections for B-29 bomber capacity, invasion troop strength, and casualty estimates for both sides. Be brutally honest. I want facts, not propaganda. Yes, sir. May I ask the purpose of this analysis? Toyoda glances toward the door where General Umezu disappeared. Some of us are trying to save what can be saved. The Emperor must understand what we face. Your analysis will help him make an informed decision. He pauses. And Hayashi, keep a personal copy of everything. History will want to know the truth about these days. After Toyoda leaves, Hayashi sits alone in the conference room, surrounded by maps and intelligence reports. He thinks about the soldiers on Okinawa, about Lieutenant No in his observation post, about the 77,000 men who are about to face an army 4 times their size supported by the largest fleet in history. He thinks about Tokyo, vulnerable to daily bombing raids. About his own family in Yokohama, his wife Akiko, his 2 daughters. What will happen to them when the Americans come? When 1,400 ships appear in Tokyo Bay? Hayashi pulls out a fresh sheet of paper and begins his analysis. He starts with the numbers from Okinawa: 647 major combat vessels, 1,400 total ships, 300,000 plus troops. Then he extrapolates. If the Americans can assemble such force for a peripheral island, what can they bring against the main islands? The numbers that emerge are apocalyptic. For an invasion of Kyushu, the Americans could likely assemble 800 to 1,000 major warships, 2,000 plus total vessels, 500,000 invasion troops with another 500,000 in reserve. For an invasion of the main island of Honshu, those numbers could double. 2,000 warships, 4,000 total vessels, 2 million troops. Against this force, Japan has 2.5 million poorly equipped soldiers, a few hundred operable aircraft, and hope. Hayashi writes, based on force ratios demonstrated at Okinawa, American invasion of the home islands would result in estimated 5 to 10 million Japanese military and civilian casualties, with complete destruction of all major cities and industrial capacity. Conventional military defense is not feasible. Recommend immediate pursuit of diplomatic solution to preserve Japanese nation and people. He seals the analysis in an envelope marked for Admiral Toyoda's eyes only. Then he makes a second copy, as Toyoda suggested. This copy he hides in his desk drawer, wrapped in oilcloth. For history. For whoever survives to write the truth about how the empire fell. At 6:30 hours, as dawn breaks over Tokyo, air raid sirens begin to wail. B-29s are approaching from the south, another bombing raid on the capital's industrial districts. Hayashi joins the other staff officers rushing to the underground shelters. As he descends into the earth, he thinks about the Americans' industrial capacity. They can bomb Tokyo while simultaneously invading Okinawa with 1,400 ships. They can fight a two-front war. Pacific and Europe and still have reserves. Japan is fighting for survival. America is fighting with one hand tied behind its back. In the shelter, officers huddle around a radio, listening to reports from Okinawa. The battle is intensifying. American troops are pushing inland. The 32nd Army is fighting from prepared positions, but the outcome is inevitable. Everyone knows it now. How long can Okinawa hold? Someone asks. 2 months, another officer replies. Maybe 3. And then silence, because everyone knows the answer. Then the Americans come here. To Kyushu. To Tokyo. With twice the force they brought to Okinawa. With 3 times. With however many ships and planes and men it takes to obliterate any resistance. Above ground, bombs fall on Tokyo. American bombs, delivered by American planes, built in American factories that produce more weapons in a week than Japan can manufacture in a year. Lieutenant Commander Hayashi closes his eyes and thinks about Lieutenant No, still at his observation post on Okinawa, still counting ships, still bearing witness to the moment when the Empire's fate was sealed. 647 major warships. The number echoes in Hayashi's mind like a death sentence. Because it is a death sentence not just for the 77,000 men on Okinawa, but for the Empire itself. The all-clear sounds at 7:10 hours. Officers emerge from the shelter to find several buildings on fire, smoke rising into the morning sky. Tokyo is burning again. It will burn many more times before this war ends. Hayashi walks back to his office and sits at his desk. He pulls out the copy of his analysis, the one meant for history, and adds a final note, April 1, 1945. Intelligence reports from Okinawa confirm American naval superiority is absolute. Japanese military leadership refuses to acknowledge strategic reality. Empire continues toward inevitable destruction. May God forgive us for what we are about to allow to happen to our people. He seals it, hides it, and returns to his duties. Because that is all any of them can do now, continue performing their duties as the world collapses around them, counting the days until the Americans bring their armada to Japan's shores and finish what they started at Okinawa. April 6, 1945. 15:47 hours. Observation post Yontan, northwestern Okinawa. Lieutenant Tadashi no longer bothers counting ships. The numbers ceased to matter 3 days ago when American forces overran the southern observation posts and began their methodical advance inland. Now, through his binoculars, he watches something far more immediate. American tanks moving along the coastal road, barely 2 kilometers from his position. The observation post has taken 17 direct hits from naval bombardment. The concrete walls are cracked, the ceiling partially collapsed. Private Yoshida is dead, killed by shrapnel on April 3rd. Private First Class Mori was wounded the same day. He lies in the corner, unconscious, his breathing shallow. Only Corporal Tanaka remains functional, manning the radio equipment that still somehow works despite the destruction around them. "Sir," Tanaka says, his voice hoarse from days without sleep, "headquarters is calling. Colonel Yahara wants a final status report before we evacuate." Evacuate. The word sounds absurd. Evacuate to where? The Americans have landed 180,000 men. They control the beaches, the roads, the air. There is no safe place on Okinawa. There is only the illusion of escape, the pretense that somehow they might slip through American lines and reach the defensive positions at Shuri. No takes the radio handset. Observation post Yontan reporting. Colonel Yahara's voice crackles through the static. "Lieutenant, what is your situation?" "Position is no longer tenable, sir. American armor is approaching from the southwest. We have 1 KIA, 1 WIA critical. Corporal Tanaka and myself still combat effective. Can you withdraw?" No looks out at the American tanks M4 Shermans. He's learned to recognize them accompanied by infantry that moves with the casual confidence of soldiers who know they've already won. Behind them, more vehicles. More troops. An endless stream of military power flowing inland like a river. "Negative, sir. We are surrounded. Withdrawal would require moving through American lines." A long pause. No can hear voices in the background at headquarters, officers conferring. When Yahara speaks again, his tone has changed. It is softer, almost paternal. "Lieutenant No, you were the first to give us accurate intelligence on the invasion fleet. Your reports have been forwarded to Tokyo. The Imperial General Staff knows the truth because of your observations. You have served the Empire with distinction." "Thank you, sir. I am authorizing you to destroy all equipment and documentation. You and Corporal Tanaka are released from further duty. You may surrender to American forces if you choose. There is no dishonor in survival when your mission is complete." The words hang in the air. Permission to surrender. From a colonel of the Imperial Japanese Army. 6 months ago, such an order would have been unthinkable. But 6 months ago, no one had counted 647 American warships. "Sir, No's voice catches. "I understand. Thank you, sir. One more thing, Lieutenant. When you counted those ships on March 31st, did you truly believe we could defeat such a force?" No closes his eyes. He thinks about that morning, watching the armada emerge from the darkness, feeling the certainty settle over him like a shroud. "No, sir. I knew immediately that the war was lost." "So did I," Yahara says quietly. "So did everyone who saw your reports. But some truths are too terrible to speak aloud. Goodbye, Lieutenant. I hope we meet again in a better world." The radio goes dead. No sets down the handset and looks at Tanaka. The young corporal has tears streaming down his face. "Sir, what do we do?" "We follow orders. Destroy the radio. Burn the documents. Help me move Private Mori somewhere the Americans will find him quickly." They work methodically. Tanaka smashes the radio with a rifle butt, then ignites the codebooks and maps with a cigarette lighter. The flames cast dancing shadows on the bunker walls. No carefully wraps Mori in a blanket and carries him outside, laying him gently in the shade where American medics will see him when they arrive. The sound of tank engines grows louder. They're less than a kilometer away now. "Corporal," No says, "you're 23 years old. You have a family in Osaka. When the Americans take you prisoner, cooperate. Answer their questions. Survive this war. Go home. That's an order." "What about you, sir?" No removes his officer's insignia and places it in his pocket. Then he unbuckles his sword, the family heirloom his grandfather carried in the Russo-Japanese War, and lays it carefully on the ground inside the bunker. He will not carry it into captivity. Some traditions must be honored, even in defeat. "I will also cooperate, Corporal. We have done our duty. We counted the ships. We told Tokyo the truth. Now we survive to rebuild Japan, because that is what Japan will need: men who understand that we cannot defeat America with spirit alone. Men who have seen what industrial power can accomplish. They stand together on the hillside, two Japanese soldiers waiting for the Americans to arrive. In the distance, across the ocean that has become an American lake, more ships continue to arrive. The count that No began 5 days ago continues. 700 ships, 800, approaching 1,000 as support vessels and supply ships join the armada. At 16:03 hours, the first American tank rounds the bend in the road. It stops. The turret swings toward them. For a moment, No thinks they will fire. Then a hatch opens and a young American sergeant emerges, rifle ready but not aimed. "You!" the sergeant shouts in broken Japanese. "Surrender! Hands up!" No and Tanaka raise their hands slowly. More American soldiers appear, surrounding them, weapons trained but fingers off triggers. They are professionals, these Americans. Well trained. Well equipped. Nothing like the propaganda that described them as soft, weak, morally corrupted. As American hands search him for weapons, No looks back at the observation post, his home for the past 6 days, the place where he first understood that the empire was doomed. Smoke still rises from the burning documents inside. An American officer approaches a captain, judging by his insignia. He speaks Japanese fluently. "You were spotting for artillery."
No replies.
"Observing. Counting." "Counting what?" "Ships. I counted your ships." The American captain's expression shifts curiosity replacing suspicion. "How many did you count?" 647 major warships. Over 1,400 total vessels. The captain stares at him.
Jesus Christ.
"You counted the whole damn fleet." He turns to one of his men. "Get intelligence up here. We've got someone they need to talk to." April 10th, 1945. Prisoner of war compound, Kadena Airfield, Okinawa. Lieutenant No sits across a table from a U.S. Navy intelligence officer, Commander Robert Shaw, who introduces himself with a cigarette and surprisingly good Japanese. The interrogation room is a tent, one of hundreds that now dot the former Japanese airfield. Outside, American construction crews work around the clock, expanding the runways, building fuel depots, transforming Okinawa into a massive forward base. "Lieutenant," Shaw says, sliding a notepad across the table, "I'd like you to tell me what you saw on March 31st. Everything. The Japanese military censored all reports about our fleet strength, so we're curious what you actually observed." No hesitates. But Yahara's final words echo in his mind. "Your mission is complete. There is no dishonor in survival." "I saw the largest military force in human history," No begins. He describes that morning, the darkness giving way to dawn, the wall of steel emerging from the mist, the systematic organization of an armada that seemed to stretch to infinity. He describes counting, recounting, the mathematical certainty settling over him that defense was impossible. Shaw listens intently, taking notes. When No finishes, the commander leans back and lights another cigarette. "Lieutenant, you're right. Operation Iceberg is the largest amphibious assault in history. We brought 1,457 ships. More than 180,000 troops in the first wave, another 200,000 in reserve. We could have brought more, but Admiral Nimitz figured this was enough." "Enough to conquer one small island," No says quietly. "Enough to demonstrate capability." Shaw's expression grows serious. "Lieutenant, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to think about it carefully. Right now, while we're fighting for Okinawa, our planners are designing Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan. Do you know what that operation will look like?" No shakes his head. 3,000 ships. Maybe more. 10 aircraft carriers. 24 battleships. We're planning to invade with over 1 million troops in the first wave, more than the entire Japanese military on the home islands. We're going to drop so many bombs that your cities will cease to exist. We're going to land so many troops that resistance will be mathematically impossible." Shaw pauses. "Unless Japan surrenders first." "Japan will not surrender. The military code dash. The military code will get millions of Japanese civilians killed. Shaw's voice hardens. Listen to me. You counted our ships. You understand what American industrial power means. We built more ships this year than Japan has built in its entire history. We're producing 1 aircraft carrier per month. 100 Liberty ships per month. We can lose 1,000 planes and replace them in a week. Can Japan do that? No. Then help me understand, why are you still fighting? You know you can't win. Every officer we capture tells us the same thing. They knew the war was lost after Midway, after the Marianas, after the Philippines. But you keep fighting. Why? No struggles for an answer. How does he explain bushido to an American? How does he describe the cultural shame of surrender, the obligation to the emperor, the burden of centuries of tradition? But sitting in this tent, watching American construction crews build an airbase in days that would have taken Japanese engineers months, those explanations feel hollow. Because, he finally says, we did not know what defeat would look like until we counted your ships. Shaw nods slowly. And now that you know. Now I know that continuing the war will destroy Japan. Not just the military, the people, the culture, everything. Your 3,000 ships will bring the apocalypse. Then help us prevent that apocalypse. Shaw leans forward. We're going to win this war, Lieutenant. That's not arrogance, it's mathematics, as you said. The only question is how many people die before Japan accepts that reality. You have connections to the Japanese military establishment. You sent reports to Tokyo. Someone there knows your name, respects your judgment. Will you write a letter? Tell them what you saw. Tell them that further resistance is suicide. No considers this. To actively encourage surrender goes beyond mere cooperation. It is betrayal. But is it betrayal to save lives? Is it betrayal to speak truth that everyone already knows but refuses to acknowledge? If I write such a letter, no asks, will it actually reach anyone in Tokyo? Or will it be filed away and forgotten? We have ways of getting messages into Japan. Leaflet drops. Radio broadcasts. Underground networks. Your words will reach people who matter. No closes his eyes and sees again that wall of ships, that impossible armada, that proof of inevitable defeat. He thinks about Lieutenant Commander Hayashi in Tokyo, about Colonel Yahara in his bunker at Shuri, about all the officers who understand the truth but cannot speak it. Perhaps one voice, speaking from captivity, freed from the burden of military protocol, can say what needs to be said. I will write the letter, No says. 3 months later. August 15th, 1945. Emperor Hirohito's voice crackles over radio sets across Japan, announcing surrender. The war is over. Japan has accepted the Potsdam Declaration. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki have accomplished what 647 warships at Okinawa could not. They forced the military establishment to accept reality. In a prisoner of war camp on Okinawa, Tadashi no listens to the emperor's speech with tears running down his face. Not tears of shame, but of relief. It is finally over. The dying can stop. Corporal Tanaka, sitting beside him, whispers, "Sir, we were right. We were right to count them. We were right to tell Tokyo. They just wouldn't listen until the bombs fell." They listened, No says quietly. They just couldn't accept it. Sometimes truth needs to be demonstrated twice, once with ships, once with atoms. In Tokyo, Lieutenant Commander Hayashi stands in the ruins of Imperial General Headquarters, partially destroyed in the firebombing that has left the capital a wasteland of ash and rubble. He holds his hidden analysis, the one he wrote on April 1st after receiving NOS reports. Every prediction has come true. Okinawa fell. The B-29s bombed daily. The atomic weapons proved that American technological superiority extended beyond mere numbers into realms Japan couldn't match. He thinks about those 647 warships. If someone in Tokyo had truly understood their meaning, had accepted that mathematics trumps spirit, would the atomic bombs have been necessary? How many lives could have been saved if the military leadership had listened to men like Colonel Yahara, who understood defeat when they saw it? History will judge them harshly, Hayashi knows. But history will also remember that some men spoke truth, even when speaking truth was dangerous. Men like Lieutenant Kōno, who counted ships and understood their meaning. Epilogue. The Okinawa invasion fleet won, 457 ships carrying over 550,000 Allied personnel represented the culmination of American industrial and military power. It was both a military operation and a message. This is what happens when America commits fully to war. Lieutenant Tadashi No survived the war and returned to Japan in 1946. He became a teacher, dedicating his life to educating young Japanese about the realities of modern warfare. He spoke often about the morning he counted 647 warships and understood that the age of bushido was over, replaced by an age of mathematics where industrial capacity determined victory. Colonel Hiromichi Yahara survived the Battle of Okinawa, one of the few senior officers to do so. He spent his later years writing about the battle, always emphasizing that the outcome was determined not by courage or tactics but by the overwhelming material superiority demonstrated by that massive fleet. The Armada at Okinawa became a symbol, a turning point when the reality of modern total war became undeniable. One Japanese survivor counted 600 ships and warned Tokyo that the empire would fall. He was right. Not because Japanese soldiers lacked courage, but because courage alone cannot defeat 1,457 ships carrying unlimited firepower and unlimited resolve. The greatest armada in history accomplished its mission. Okinawa fell. Japan surrendered. And the world learned that in modern warfare, the side that can assemble 647 warships for a single battle has already won, regardless of what the enemy's warrior code might say.